Okay, so we're sitting here listening to these words coming from the Buddha about how to develop our minds, in this case, how to particularly develop the virtues in our mind, the positive qualities. Yeah, so I'll sing a little prayer, our little prayer of refuge, the first two lines, and the second two lines having actually a bodhicitta motivation as our goal, our purpose of being here. So the prayer says we're going to I rely on the Buddha Dhamma Sangha, and by the virtue of listening to these teachings, may we become a Buddha to benefit all. So that's our long-term goal, okay. Sangye charang soke chognam la jang tro baru dagni kyab suchi dagi chönyen gibe sonam ki drola penchir sangye drupa shok sangye charang soke chognam la jang tro baru dagni kyab suchi dagi chönyen gibe sonam ki drola penchir sangye drupa shok sangye charang soke chognam la Jiangchu Baru Dagni Kyab Suchi, Dagi Chönyen Gipe Sonam Ki, Drola Penche Sangye, Drunpa Sho. Well, this bodhicitta, I mean, it's interesting. It's got words, it's meaning in English. For some reason, it's just seems kind of boring, you know. When you think of the meaning, literally, bodhi referring to awakening, Buddhahood, and then chitta just means mind, you know, or attitude, a mind of enlightenment. I don't know, somehow Bodhichitta, if you get used to it, it's like any word, whether it's English or from Timbuktu, who cares? If you know the meaning, if it conveys something, that's good enough, you know. So Bodhicitta, some reason, I like the word. Mind of enlightenment, not sure. So it's basically, it's an attitude, really. It's an attitude, you know. It's more advanced. It's on the definitely the more advanced teachings. There's no way we can begin with this straight away. As we discussed last night, all the teachings of the first stages of the path have to do with this is all about benefiting others, you know, being driven by the wish to benefit others. That's advanced. We've got to benefit ourselves first. So the first stages of the path are about benefiting ourselves. As we'd like to say, self-compassion, you know. And in fact, to really have bodhicitta properly, to have developed love and compassion, which then culminates in this bodhicitta. It's not possible, absolutely not possible, without putting yourself together first. Because when you first read the teachings about bodhicitta, you know, it's an attitude that when a person has accomplished it, okay, just as it shows it, when a person has accomplished bodhicitta, not just a nice feeling occasionally, but actually has stably accomplished it. One of the criteria of their having accomplished it is that, you know, that there's no longer the thought of I in the normal, typical way that we have the thought of I in their mind. Now that sounds like mental illness to us, serious mental illness, you know. We can't even find an equivalent to that in modern psychology. We all understand helping others, but we've got to be referring to the self first. And we all just assume that there's only a certain degree to which you can help others, you know. This idea of bodhicitta has gone way, way beyond that. So that just doesn't. How can we put that together? How can we bring that into our lives without having any context? You know, impossible. Literally impossible. And in fact, we would consider it mental illness. Or if you listen to it, I mean, you hear the teachings, and basically, when you know, like I was a Catholic, right? I used to love reading the lives of all the saints. And that's how they sounded. So basically, you read about bodhicitta and you go, what? This is a method of how to become a saint. Who wants to become a saint, for God's sake? You know, we don't think we want to become a saint. There's no university degree to become a saint. Give your life for others. You hear about, you know, like the stories, people sacrifice their lives for others and become martyrs. Who wants to be that? Thank you very much. No, thank you. So it doesn't sound very exciting, very appealing. But on the other hand, I find in modern people, among Western people, that often what drives people to Buddhism, what makes them like Buddhism, is this incredible talk of bodhicitta. This idea of this extraordinary levels of love and compassion for others. And in general, I think people who have a spiritual path, very much the idea of love, people talk about it's all about love, that's marvelous. But the Buddha's explanation is the levels to which we need to be able to develop love and compassion are way more radical, which are what are the method to get to becoming a bodhisattva, an awakened person, a person who's actually accomplished bodhicitta. It's just way more radical. We don't. It's on the face of it. It seems impossible. It seems like anyway, who would want to be like that? We can't imagine it. So a person would have bodhicitta. First of all, one of the first things is there'd be no longer the normal thought of I. And the simple reason is because they've done the job. They fixed their own selves up. They don't need to bother with I any longer. They can now afford to think of others, which again, a big surprise to us. So the first one is that there's no longer the normal thought of I. In the way for us, that I is the central player in our head. Even if we're nice people, the subject of all our thoughts is me. I think so, if we analyze it. If you're a bodhisattva, it wouldn't even arise. You finish that, And the long term, the other quality of a bodhisattva are two main things. The other one is that they're this fierce, because of the extraordinary levels of love and compassion, affection for all, quote, all beings. And that part seems completely insane, completely over the top. To having immense love and compassion equally for all beings, that's impossible. So that's what drives them. And so their goal now is to go from life to life to life to life, no matter how long it takes, driven by this fierce, wish to become a Buddha, to be fully developed. Because then you're capable of benefiting all these sentient beings. We talk about love and compassion. There's no question. We have it. We have it in our lives. But if we compare with that, then it's just we have limited. So the methods in the text, the Lamrim, the methods they lay out. There's two main systems, kind of incremental stages of practice that culminate in this bodhicitta. And there's one particular method that combines these two. I think they're called 6 causes and 1 effect, and the other one's called exchanging self for others, something like that. And there's a combination of these, about 11 different points. The very first one is really one that really is, we can spend the whole, all day, just now, this session on this, but it's good enough. And it explains to us clearly the obstacles, what the things are in our mind right now that prevent us right now from being a bodhisattva. So the very first of these 11 is the technique that's called cultivating equanimity. Equanimity. That's a very nice word, okay? It's got different meanings in Buddhism. In the first stages of practice, in the wisdom wing stages of practice, where you're working on yourself for your own benefit, lessening your delusions, abiding by the laws of karma, giving up attachment, giving up the neuroses, which are what causing us suffering and which separate us from others. Then you get some kind of equanimity within yourself as you become more stable in your practice, less up and down emotionally, But here, the equanimity is it's not the same meaning. It's a very precise attitude that's related to others. And this really gives us the framework, the Buddhist framework of this, developing this bodhicitta. So equanimity, when you've got it, the very first of these 11 little techniques, is an attitude, is a view, is a heartfelt recognition that friends, enemies, and strangers, three categories: friends, enemies, and strangers. And if we look at this Buddhist view of the mind, these are the objects of attachment, aversion, and indifference. Attachment, aversion, indifference. And they're the three poisons, basically. So in the wisdom, when you learn about the three poisons in relation to giving up attachment to, the sense objects, giving up aversion for the people who make us unhappy, and giving up, and ignorance really is more broadly here, more precisely, the view that drives attachment and ignorance, the view of this neurotic I, But here, it's related to the sentient beings of the world. So we have attachment. So this equanimity is this heartfelt recognition that these three groups of people, which encompasses every being in all universes, there is no fourth category, that the objects of our attachment, whom we can call friend, the objects of our aversion, whom we can call enemy, convenient label, mightn't use that word in our daily lives, but it makes sense. And then the third one, the objects of our indifference, particular characteristic that comes from ignorance. Indifference is for the group called strangers. Now, so then strangers, that's 99.9999% of the universe, isn't it? So what is a friend by definition? Is the object of our attachment is a person or a being who does what my attachment wants, who fulfills my attachment's needs. That's what the term here, friend, is referring to, that the attachment object, the object of attachment, and in particular the one who fulfills my needs. That's why we do. So here we do have love for those. Love is one of the virtues in Buddhist view of the mind. As we know, we've got the states of mind that are neurotic, I-based, delusional, distressing. And here the three poisons: attachment, aversion, and in this case, indifference, characteristic of ignorance. And all the others that are there that come out of these, like arrogance, all the other dramas we have, the neurotic ones. Then you have the positive qualities, the virtues, the virtuous qualities, the good qualities, the positive qualities: love and compassion, kindness, generosity, forgiveness, blah, blah. This clear distinction in Buddhist psychology. So if we're trying to cultivate love and compassion and all the others, we better know what they mean. So love is the delight that someone be happy. Love is happy that someone is happy. Love is the wish that someone be happy. Compassion is empathy with those who are suffering, the wish they don't suffer. Love and compassion. These are the two main virtues that encompass really all the others. So at the moment, we do have some love, but only for that first group, only for those who fulfill my needs. It goes without saying. Analyze, look at your life. The ones we're attached to, the poodle, the sister you adore, your beloved partner, your baby. We absolutely have love for them. We want them to be happy. We think of them all the time, but they're the ones we're attached to. And if they fulfill our attachment's needs, then for sure we want them to be happy. In fact, we so bring these two together, we assume they mean the same thing. But in Buddhist view, they're absolutely different. Attachment is neurotic, needy, emotional hunger. It's completely I-based, it's fear-based, and it causes suffering. Love is a virtue, it's useful, but as Lama Zopa says, we say in the West, it's got strings attached. Our love at the moment, as Lama Zopa says, it's unstable. We only have love for those who fulfill our attachment's needs, and we consider that normal. In the world, that's how it is, isn't it? My people, the pets I like, the people I like, the family, the groups. If they fit my needs, then they go into the friend category, and I have some love for them. Some more than others, for sure. Then you got the other next category. They're called enemy. as I said, we mightn't use that word, but it's a good label for those who are the objects of our aversion. And now, who are they? By definition, an object of our aversion is a person who doesn't fulfill, who specifically or intentionally doesn't do what my attachment wants. That's very clear. As soon as that boyfriend cheats me, gives me up for a younger version, they immediately move from the friend category into the enemy category, don't they? And love is turned off like a tap. And now you hate them, you dislike them, they've harmed you, they've hurt you. So they are in the enemy category. There's no way you will continue to want them to be happy. Okay, some people do, but in general, we can see, isn't it? Very clear in the world, groups, countries, it's like that. And the third category, who are they? What's a stranger? Well, by definition, is a stranger who neither helps me nor harms me. And how do we, in fact, they don't even come into our life. They don't even come into our we don't even notice strangers. They're boring. So how do we feel about them? Total indifference. We couldn't care less. Or as Americans say, we could care less. I find it odd. We say you couldn't care less. You could care less. That's very strange, isn't it? That seems to be wrong. You could care less. You couldn't care less. There's no way you could care less than that. You couldn't care less. We understand this, and this grouping, this friend, enemy, stranger, it's so obvious when we point it out. But to think that we should be any other way, why should we be? That's most peculiar, It seems odd that you would be different. This is normal, we say, and monkeys are like it, and dogs and ants. Because why? Because from the Buddhist point of view, the Buddhist view of the mind refers to all living beings, not just humans. That's a bit surprising. Buddhist psychology is a model that refers to all sentient beings. And if you observe the ants and the dogs, well, the ants are a bit harder to observe because they're too tiny. But look at the dogs and the monkeys. Look at all those animal shows. They're exactly the same. They have their groups, they have their affections, their attachments, their aversions, they have their jealousies. It's just, we can see the same. They're exactly the same. It's incredible. Actually, it really shows how there's such weird labels, how we can change them very quickly. I remember when I worked with people in prison, especially in the 90s when we started the Liberation Prison Project. It still goes on, right? But I'm not part of it anymore, but I still work with a few prisoners. But I remember in California, especially where I started, the first people I started working with, it happened, I was editing Mandala magazine, and or a letter from this young Mexican man, Arturo, who was 18. He told me he was in a prison, this strict prison top security prison in Northern California. Pelican Bay, it's called. It's totally, what they call permanent lockdown. In your cells 23 hours a day, often with a cellmate, often on your own. So quite intense. And it was full of all the gangsters from all the other prisons. It was a gang activity, Mexican gang activity, black gang activity, the Asian gangs and the white supremacist gangs. Mostly it was it seemed to be the majority were the Latino gangs. What was so fascinating, you lived in Los Angeles, let's say, let's say Lou lives in Los Angeles and I live in Los Angeles and he's one block and I'm the next block because the gangs go block by block. I think that things are different now, certainly in the prisons. And we would fight to the death. We'd kill each other and we'd rape girls and kill boys. And so we would kill each other. We'd be the worst enemies, absolutely clear, worst enemies, definite. We have a fight, we both get arrested, we get sent to prison. The next day, in that prison, we become blood brothers. Overnight, because now we have joined, there's only 2 Latino gangs in the California prisons, and it's unique to the prisons. It's called the Northerners, anybody up around from San Francisco down, and the Southerners, anybody from Los Angeles sort of up, quite where the border is, I don't know. The Southerners and the Northerners. And they hate each other more than the blacks and the white supremacists. And when the Latinos would have when the prisoners would have their wars, and they were serious about their gang wars, The Northerners would team up with the blacks, whom they hated, against the Southerners, whom they hated even more, who teamed up with the white supremacists. So it really proves it's all completely empty. And isn't that incredible, isn't it? Overnight, you have a new configuration, you know. Next day, Lou and I would be blood brothers. Next day, no argument. We would die for each other. That just proves emptiness, isn't it? It's incredible. Blows your mind. So friend, enemy, stranger. Friend, enemy, stranger. And it seems kind of cute. All these words are so simple in Buddhism. But it's so evident. And this really explains, it shows exactly from the Buddhist perspective, you know, the way the mind works. But because it's so primordial and seemingly so natural, the whole world, I mean, just look at the human world, it runs on this. It's really clear. We have our beloveds, you know. I think recently, wasn't it, J.D. Vance? He talked about how God, Christians, he's a Catholic. He became a Catholic recently. And he met the Pope, didn't he? The last one. The next day, the Pope died. You know, the new Pope, the new Pope called out J.D. Vance. Because J.D. Vance said something like, Jesus teaches that you love your family most. Then he's kind of graded the love to all the way out to the world. And the Pope told him off. He said, no, Jesus does not teach that. You know, it's very interesting. So we can see that, I mean, we know the teachings. You can hear go beyond loving just your family. It sounds like hard work. I mean, it's hard enough work loving your family. Look at the amount of work it takes to love your husband when he's, you know, love your children when they don't do what you want. But to even think you try and consider that there are methods or that it's reasonable to want to love and have compassion for every person, including the people who harm you, not to mention the people who are lousy politicians, not to mention the pedophiles and the terrorists and the murderers. There's no logic to this. It's like everything in our being can't work this out. And why? It's because we have attachment. What it says, attachment effectively is the main cause of suffering in the Four Noble Truths, you know. So this teaching to try and accomplish bodhicitta, we love to hear them, but they're like insane. They're intense. We should take them seriously. You know? Not just, oh yeah, I love bodhicitta. It's like a joke to say that. If no idea what we're talking about. They're over the top. I mean it. So equanimity is very first of these 11 techniques. And this is fundamental. It's like the absolute basis, the foundation for our ability to grow the mind that eventually culminates in bodhicitta. It's the attitude we're trying to cultivate, the attitude, the view that, you know, and of course, when you've got it, it'll be heartfelt and spontaneous, but we have to practice it. That, you know, and we can, and as we're talking, let's imagine, let's have it in front of us, a friend, an enemy, and a stranger. You know, it's right in front of you as we're talking, just visualize right in front of you a person you don't like, a person, even, I mean, you mightn't call them an enemy, but a person who's mean to you, a person at work, your sister. I mean, often can be family. We know that, people we've struggled with, you know. A person at work who's really harmed you. I mean, and anybody who's harmed you even more. I mean, if you can, it's hard to think of this person and want to try and get equanimity for them. And I haven't finished yet. I didn't even finish what it was. I said heartfelt recognition. I haven't finished my sentence. So I've got to go back to the beginning. So equanimity is the heartfelt recognition that friend, enemy, and stranger, this is the point now, are equal to each other from one point of view. From one point of view. They could be equal in other points of view, but this is the point. This is the key point. They're equal to each other from one point of view. They're equal in their wish to be happy, and they're equal in their wish not to suffer. That's it. That's it. They're equal. They equally want to be happy, and they equally don't want suffering. So that's something we've got to think about, because we don't kind of think of life like that. But this is a fundamental point that drives the entire Buddhist approach to life. Buddha is established from observation. He says every living being is driven, and it's really clear, is driven by the wish to be happy, is driven by the wish to have nice things happen, to have nice experiences, happy feelings. That's what happiness means. And we analyze it. And this is really what drives the entire Buddhist teaching on understanding your own mind and looking at attachment and seeing where we get driven up garden paths in our attempt to get happy. Because Buddha's pointing out right at the beginning, you all want to be happy, but honey child, do you notice the very things you do that you think will bring you happiness, in fact, don't? This is the whole point. That's why the wisdom wing is so important to understand before we get anywhere near the compassion wing. Right now, we are driven. Everybody wants happiness. Nobody wants suffering. Just look at one day of your life, and you can prove this with absolute certainty. And this is so primordial, so natural. Ants and monkeys and dogs the same. We're driven, and why are we? Why? So it's interesting. We all want to be happy. It's so fascinating. We should ask the question why. You know what it means for a start. What it means for a start. We should be clear about this. And you learn this back in the wisdom wing. Happy means happy feelings, you know, and that means through the sensory consciousness and the mental consciousness. So the only method we tend to have, this is what makes us being samsaric beings while we're in samsara, is because we believe totally, all beings do, that getting what attachment wants is the method to get happy feelings. And it does bring happy feelings. It does, but they're very short-lived, especially with the senses, you know. We don't even understand mental happiness. We're driven by the sensory one. That's the first level. It's all that drives animals, totally. And we are like that. So we notice that eating food triggers happy feelings. You know, people smiling at you triggers happy feelings. A sunny day with a pleasing on your senses triggers happy feelings. So we live our lives mostly at that level. The senses, we're driven by this because we have these bodies of the five senses. So attachment is this mistaken view that causes us to believe totally that happiness is what you get when you get what attachment wants. This is the whole Buddhist teachings in the wisdom wing, and to try to see the fault in this, not moralistically, but practically, scientifically. It's not going to work, Buddha says. So we've got to know that with certainty first. And this informs then our wish that others be happy, which is what love means. May you be happy. And it's attachment that messes it up, you know. So all this understanding about the mind comes in the earlier stages of practice. So we're all driven. Buddha says we are driven. Every being is driven by the wish to be happy and to not suffer. So we can look at every day, every action we do. This underpins it. Why do you move your body? Because it's not comfortable when you're sitting down. First there were pleasant feelings and the others unpleasant, so you move. You put a cardigan on a hot day, on a cool day, because you're cold. You take it off when it gets hot. You eat because you're hungry. We're driven by this. We're driven by this. You know? And it's all just, it's not very intentional. We just follow our feelings, you know. And then we wonder why it doesn't last, because we don't understand the mind. So this doesn't mean we've got to give up being happy. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. And this is part of our problem, because we can't even see the difference between following attachment and knowing how to be happy. So then we hear, as Amma Zopa says, when we hear the Buddha says, sorry guys, you can't get happy unless you give up attachment. We then think, oh, I've got to give up my happiness, give up my heart, because we assume attachment is the same as love. Attachment is the same as happiness. Completely different. Nevertheless, every being is driven by this wish to be happy, have happy feelings. You know, that includes, of course, having the conditions in a life we know contact with will bring happy feelings. That's all part of the virtuous karma, to have the food when you need it, the sun when you need it, you know, all this kind of thing. But the happiness is in the mind. Happiness is not a characteristic of a cake or a nice cardigan or a handsome boyfriend. And that's the major mistake. We can wish that for beings, because given that we are in human bodies, we can wish other people to have happiness in the heart and then to have experiences that will give them what they need. We want to want that for people. That's called love. May you be happy. May you get what you need, you know, that kind of thing. So like I said, we only have that for our attachment objects. And if we ever do anything to make it happen, it's only for them. You know, it's rare. We stretch ourselves beyond that. And this is why it's difficult. I mean, you think about this. You know, if you're close to somebody, there is some feeling there. There's some affection there, right? There's a feeling, affection. So you know that you love that person. When you feel you think about them, you make you feel close to them because you've got attachment for them. And then you think of the other people next door, they're nice people, but you mean, I've got to love them the same as my child? It sounds exhausting. What am I supposed to do to have that feeling? It's just, what are you talking about? We can't imagine it, you know? And then you think of the mean ones. You can't even conceive of why it would be necessary. Why on earth should I have affection? You mean I've got to love them with affection? It just seems ridiculous to us. Which is why this idea of bodhicitta is really over the top, you know? So the really simple logical reason for all this, one logical reason, is because the Buddha is saying for oneself to try and have love and compassion for your own benefit, really for your own benefit. Because what he's pointing out is that what causes me suffering is my attachment, my anger, my jealousy, my low self-esteem, my aversion for enemies, my indifference to strangers, and my attachment to friends. They are why I suffer. Forget about the others. They're why I suffer. So even you could argue, even for your own benefit, you can argue this way. Even for your own benefit, you need to develop love and compassion. I don't think that's inferior. In fact, that's one of the logical reasons to try and prove, to try and see oneself in the 11 stages. One of the arguments, one of the meditations we need to do is look at the disadvantages of being self-centered to yourself. We can see that with other people, you know. They're miserable. So when we understand that we suffer because of delusions, so obviously we suffer when we've got attachment, aversion, and indifference. So we are the beneficiary of that misery. So even for our own benefit, we might as well get love and compassion. Okay, it won't be as advanced as the Bodhisattva because they're way beyond seeing the benefit to themselves. They're way beyond that. The love and compassion they have is unbelievably, utterly genuine. Like as if every being on the planet is their most precious child. That's the way to go, you know. But I think really good logic, I think it's so important to see this as to our own advantage. Even in the very first stages of practice, we talk about giving up attachment, giving up anger, just there's no discussion of compassion. The very, to try and understand these are why we suffer. Not just suffering at the gross level of having pains and no money, but suffering of having the delusions themselves, the mental suffering. We are tortured by attachment and anger and depression and anxiety and low self-esteem. They are what torture us. We're more aware of it these days. Everybody goes to their therapist because we've got anxiety. We're not worrying about other people, just as unhappy feelings. So we can see the unhappy feelings cause us suffering. The delusions cause us suffering. So it's an advantage. So we've got to see we are sick of this suffering. So even on the compassion wing, where the emphasis now is on to develop these so we can be a benefit to others, still we can see the disadvantage to oneself. Having fierce attachment for one group and anger for the other group and boredom and indifference for the third group. You know, your life will be miserable. Like most people, I mean, even in relationships, I remember hearing Oprah say that in all the talks with women and their relationships and things. So the vast majority of the women who stay in lousy relationships with people they have aversion to, where they're lonely and bored, it's because they're afraid to be alone, afraid to, better to have something than to have nothing. I mean, how appalling that would be. How utterly appalling for yourself to be so miserable, to be so afraid that you don't even know it's possible that you can find happiness in yourself, you know. So you put up with garbage, put up with a miserable relationship. Unbelievable. Just unbelievable. We don't even know how to help ourselves. We have no idea how to help ourselves. It's incredible. No idea how to take care of ourselves. No idea. When we talk about self-compassion, we have zero. There's so much fear. So to see the advantage to oneself is incredibly important. I remember when I first heard all these teachings from the Dalai Lama, I remember hearing, and I just thought it was just ridiculous. It was over the top, this level of love and compassion for everybody. That I heard him say, it was so helpful. He said, you want to help others, practice compassion. You want to help yourself, practice compassion. And that's a really important point. We can't see this. We really can't see, anger we have for our sister. We can never, feels like impossible to give it up because the karma is so strong between us. And you're angry, you're hurt, you're resentful, you're jealous, you're upset. We can't even see that we're harming ourselves. This is so advanced, actually, to realize we're harming ourselves. We can't see it because we feel justified. We feel it's not my fault, This is in the wisdom wing. So in other words, in the wisdom wing, one of the first things you got to get in touch with is that you're driven by the wish to be happy. So what Buddha's explaining to us in the Four Noble Truths is the method of how exactly to achieve that. Just give up negative karma and give up delusions. This already is so advanced. No discussion about love and compassion yet. So we know that, then we can begin to now go, wow, we're all in the same boat. Everybody wants the same thing. Everybody wants to be happy and doesn't want to suffer. And so that's what equanimity is this genuine recognition that everybody is driven by this. And then because you understand karma and you see the enemy, they cheated on you, and they're going to cheat on their next one and they're mean and ugly and steal and lie. And you think, why on earth would I even bother thinking they also want to be happy? Look at what a creep they are. We can't even see it, We can't even recognize why they're doing those negative things is because they're driven by the wish to be happy and because they think that'll get them happiness. Why else do you think a person does something? Why do you think a pedophile jumps on a little girl? Because of attachment and past karma. They're driven by their own past nonsense and they're completely convinced that will bring them happiness. That's why they do it. What the hell do you think? Why do you think you do anything? Why do you think you're attached and angry and jealous and do things? Because you're driven by the wish to be happy and you have the false understanding of what will bring you happiness. That's what, then when you realize this for yourself, then you realize it for others and then you'll have compassion for them. Equanimity is the first step. So, and why is it the first step? If you're trying to develop love and compassion for others, which is the purpose of the path in these 11 steps, you've got to have a logical reason why you want someone to be happy. Love means may you be happy. So the thing is with equanimity, what we're doing is changing the logic from ego's logic, which is not logical, but it's ego's logic. Ego's logic now is, I want you to be happy as long as you make me happy. That's the love we have for those we're attached to. That's the usual love we have. I'm prepared to have affection for you, love for you. And it's not being mean to us. We know the pain and the hurt when someone cheats on us in a relationship. I mean, it can almost make us mad. The feeling of the terrible feeling of suffering when someone cheats on us, a person you've adored and loved. So we know the pain is unbearable. But even imagine you're now going to try and want that person to be happy. It just seems like twisted almost. So we understand this. So at the moment, we do have love. We do want people to be happy, but just that group. We do have compassion, but just that group. So what we're trying, that's ego's view. So as soon as those people stop doing what my attachment wants, and sure, when it comes to mothers, maybe they don't, no matter how much the kid abuses them, they'll keep loving them. We know that. Even some partners as well, but often it's so driven by attachment, we can't see the difference. So the logic of attachment, the logic of love now is, if you do my wishes, I'm prepared to love you. And we don't think we don't make it sound so blatant, but our behavior proves it, We're trying to change the logic from, I will love you, that my love is contingent upon your doing what my attachment wants. We're moving it from that to, I want you. So the limited love is, may you be happy. So we may you be happy as long as you keep doing my wishes. So we're changing it from that to, may you be happy because you want to be happy. That's all equanimity is. The recognition. You're shifting the reasoning for wanting others to be happy from you do my wishes to because you want it. So it's to recognize that everybody is driven by the wish to be happy. That's not easy because we're so blinded by the mean, ugly ones, thinking, what do you mean they want to be happy? They don't deserve to be happy. We can't even see that they want to be happy. So this is already quite profound to recognize that everybody wants it, including the pedophiles and the murderers. It doesn't make sense to us. So we've got to get past all that behavior and know from the very beginning about karma, why they do it, and see that underneath we're all driven by the same wish. So it's quite intense to get there psychologically, you know. A simple recognition. Everybody wants it. The enemy, friend, and stranger are equal from this point of view. They're not equal from the point of view of what they do for you. They're not equal from the point of view of their intelligence or whatever. But they're from their wish that every being, every ant, every dog, every creature, every human, every monkey, every millisecond is driven by the wish to be happy. I'm not talking about attachment here, driven by the wish to be happy. Yeah, attachment drives it. So the whole Buddhist deal is what is happiness and how do you get it? That's honestly what his path is. He talks about suffering, how to stop it. You flip it over, it's called what is happiness and how to get it. So it needs a lot of analysis because we have all these different views of what happiness is and what suffering is, don't we? And what causes it. That's the starting point. So ask me some questions. Any questions? Any questions? No questions, okay. So just think about, got to think about these things. There's huge shifts have to happen in the mind, you know. So once you've got that clear, I mean, once you start with the beginnings of that, then the next step in this kind of little order of these techniques, you know. The next one is so weird for us, but it's based on this Buddhist view that there are trillions of sentient beings who've all had trillions of lifetimes. So I think mathematically, logically, we bumped into each other countless times. I remember telling this to a mathematician, he said it was stupid. I don't know, it seems logical to me. I don't know. We've got countless lives and countless beings, and we've got countless rebirths. It just seems like we bumped into each other countless times. It makes sense. That's a weird idea for us, but this is the next little point to contemplate. So here they say basically this thing to think about, this expansive view, is that all sentient beings have been my mother. And the only reason they talk mother, as His Holiness says, is because it's an example of a person who's taken care of you. So of course it's difficult in the West because, you know, we don't like our mums, you know, it's a trouble. So he says, well, anybody who's nurtured you, that's the purpose of it. Just to open your mind, you know, just to the possibility that we've met lots of beings before, and you've been all friends, enemies, and strangers in countless lives. You're beloved of this life. And this very sobering idea, if you take the view of karma, that you're beloved of this life was your worst enemy of the past life. It's almost like hard to bear, you know. So it kind of loosens the grip a little bit, expands your mind, you know. So then the third point is that your mother is kind. How to think of the kindness of the mother. This is a massive one. But there's another point there. There's another one too. There's a second meditation that is even more, it seems even more abstract, but is very delicious, really. But the one of the mother first, let's look at it. And it's a very shocking one, but it's a very good one to do. I know the number of people I know who are Buddhists who really worked on this with their mothers, whom they blame for their problems, and like most of us do, you know, their neurotic mums. So what does it mean by kind? I find this very helpful. What does it mean by anyone, but especially I say your mother, but let's just say anyone. What does it mean by kind? I think our definition of kind, we say, well, first of all, when we say, oh, she's so kind, almost first of all, what we're talking about is almost like a characteristic of somebody. They've got a very sweet nature, and that could be possible. That could be true. But here, when we say a person is kind, they mean to me, you know, your ex-husband is being very kind to his new wife, but you don't want to know about that one, isn't it? So when we say, oh, he's so kind, we mean to me. So what we mean by kind, in other words, is, I'm sorry, it's based on attachment. They do what I want. I mean, you know, if I go to a shop and the person smiles at me and gives me a special, finds the object, finds the thing I want and gives me a discount, I will definitely say, you are so kind. Of course we will. We're so moved by it. Someone actually thought of me and did something nice. So our view of kind means they do what my attachment wants. You know, it's so clear. It's a very self-centered definition. So here the meaning is, and it's a bit more abstract, but it's got some logic to it, that, and this is where it can help, even if you do have a neurotic mother who hasn't always done good things for you. And that's a fact. Lots of mothers are terrible people. There's no argument there. But we should look at, I think this is an added point here, we should look at why we have this deep, absolute, convinced, attached view that somehow our mother, you've got to think about this, it's very fascinating, that our mother, my mother, should be kind. I don't know why we think that. Think about that. I think what we really mean is we want them to be kind to us. We say they should be. You know, a mother, and we're so shocked when she's not, when she's a mean person or self-centered. And all that means is attachment, because attachment is this little junkie in us that just assumes I deserve only good things. So since we're a little girl, we've had a mother who's been mean and selfish and unkind to us. We're so shocked by it. Why we're shocked is because our attachment is an assumption that because attachment is a junkie that only wants nice things. So we're very shocked as a child, this mother is being mean to us because the attachment's not getting what it wants. That's the logic behind it. That is the logic behind it, you know. So it's a really good exercise to see your mother from this other point of view. From the point of view, so the kind here doesn't mean she's got a sweet nature, and it doesn't mean she only does what your attachment wants. Kind here means that she does anything at all that facilitates your life. That's really what kindness is. Your mum. She, you know, she gave birth to you. I find that's one of the most powerful reasons to think your mother's kind. I remember this man I know from years ago who, when he was about 40, his mum told him that she was in the hospital ready to abort him. She was in her gown, everything was booked in. She was ready. She stood up. She walked to this door to go to the next room, and she changed her mind. She told him this. He was so moved by this that she chose not to kill him. It blew his mind. Well, your mother chose not to kill you. She mightn't have had the thought to kill you, but she didn't kill you. So I think that's a pretty powerful reason to be grateful to your mum. I'm sorry, it's a fact. I always remember this one person particularly I know, whose mother, who gave away her baby when she was 17, back in the 60s. You know, me and some friends said, oh, have an abortion. Come on, have an abortion. No, she didn't want an abortion. So she risked losing her boyfriend. She was a Catholic at the time, I think. Yeah, she might have been. But she didn't want to abort the baby. So she had the baby, and then she gave the baby away. The baby got a really good life. Then she missed the baby, and she was yearning and felt pain over the years. And she finally did that business of searching for her child and found the child. But the child didn't like her. She resented her. She was resentful to her. And this broke this person's heart, because she did really do it she consciously decided she wouldn't have an abortion. She consciously decided she'd give this person life. But this person doesn't know that. Do you understand me? They didn't think of that. That's incredible. I aborted my baby. Oh, but if your mother's neurotic, you know, let's say, selfish and mean, but she did feed you, you're still alive, maybe your father fed you, whoever. But think, in other words, instead of seeing your mother through the lenses of attachment, and then because she's mean and nasty, and she could very well be, don't paint her with just that brush. It's a really good practice to point out things that she's done since you're born, things we take for granted, like feed you, clothe you, wipe your dirty bottom. Do you understand me? She did those things. She mightn't have done them all the time, but she did them. Well, that's, you know, each thing, how kind she was. It's a very powerful practice. So what happens is you gradually, and that's my friends who've done this, Buddhists, completely changes their painting, their picture of their mother in their mind. They now see objectively this person who's driven by her own delusions. That's why she's self-centered. That's why she's been mean, and they understand her, and they're grateful for her kindness, giving birth to them, educating them, and so they take care of them. That's incredible, and it's possible. You change your mind. You see her differently. It's a very powerful practice, I tell you. And of course, this is also based on understanding karma. You know. So the other one, the second little meditation in this number 3 point. Oh, I'm back in Santa Fe, sniffing away. In the other one, the second one is really very tasty. This 3B, if you like, this third little of the 11 points that lead you gradually. This other one is, all beings are kind to me. So on the face of it, clearly absurd. So what does it mean? Well, this bare fact that they've done things for you, so you can see this is true scientifically. And I'll put it this way. Since you were conceived up until now, every tiny thing that has facilitated your life has been the handiwork of sentient beings. That is a fact, a scientific fact. And it should blow our minds and fill us with such affection and gratitude. This is a fact, you know. Instead of seeing everything through the lenses of attachment, which is what blinds us and narrows our minds so profoundly. So if I go to a shop and they give me something nice, I'm only prepared to think they're kind if they satisfy, if they're being particularly sweet to me at that moment. But if you think of, and this contemplation is not difficult. Think of anything that you've got, anything, your glasses, your clothes, your food, the carpet, the floor, anything you point to. And since you're born, since you're conceived, it's the handiwork of sentient beings. I always think of this body. The one thing we think of as mine. Well, excuse me, my father and mother managed to get their egg and sperm together. Without that, I would not have a body. That is already incredible. And from that first day, my mother ate food, did she not? And she probably ate chickens and fishes and bulls. So if she, you know, as well as everything else, well, this little body that grew in her body, it didn't come from the bloody sky. It was the result of those animals that my mother ingested. So this little body came out after 7 months. There it was, you know, the handiwork of all those creatures. It was a mountain of meat and fishes and bulls and cows. You can't say it's not true. That's enough to blow your mind. But we don't think that because we're so self-centered. Naturally, we are so absorbed in me and mine and see everything through the lenses of attachment. So this is mind-blowing way just to think. And this is not like emptiness, complicated, but it's profound, you know. You just have to think it, that's all. We just don't bother. Because we're so stuck with self-grasping and just seeing everything as we take it for granted. And we have this hubris, this kind of like, I deserve good food. You walk into the cafe and you pay your money. What do you mean they're kind? It's their job, you know. Excuse me. I'm paying my money. Give me my food. We're totally driven by attachment and hubris and expectation and entitlement, you know. So it's changing your mind in a profound way to see these things differently. And this is not made up rubbish. This is scientific fact. You know? And then we think, what do you mean they're kind? They weren't thinking about me. So we only think people are kind if they think of me especially. No, it's not the point here. You know, the people who made my glasses, like I've got this plus, like I have three levels, you know, triple lenses. And this one down here on this eye is about 13 plus. I'm very long-sighted. I need hugely thick lens. When I was a little girl, I was a little baby, a kid, like 2, my glasses were so thick, you know, very, very thick. So clever people in this world of making glasses have created these very intelligent, very thin, expensive lenses, so they're not uncomfortable on my face. How kind they are. But I mean, how kind to make glasses at all. I'm trying to think people before they invented glasses. What did all those poor people do in earlier days? What did they do back in the Middle Ages? Did they have glasses in the Middle Ages? When did they invent glasses? When did opticians come along? I mean, most people have got bad eyesight. Can you imagine? I mean, I can't see a single thing without my glasses. Utterly impossible. I wouldn't do anything. I can't read a word. I can't see anything. Everything's just vague. I would be absolutely hopeless without my glasses. And if I'm not grateful to those people who are clever people, and indeed whom I spend money on, my God, you should be so grateful. It's like people who nearly lost their lives and then get saved again. They appreciate for a while, but after a while, you just get used to it. You take it for granted. Because the ego grasping is so strong, we take everything for granted. It's my right. When attachment gets what it wants, attachment is this junkie that is so greedy, we're entitled. I should have good glasses. That's how we are. So in other words, when you compare an ordinary person, we are nice people. We're not pedophiles and drunks and maniacs and liars and thieves and murderers. We aren't. So we think we're nice people, and we are. But if we compare with a bodhisattva who's gone beyond all this attachment, who's given it up, and there's these levels of love and compassion, that's why it seems like insane, I mean, when I had to write the eulogy for Lama Rinpoche, I don't know if you've seen it. Have you seen that or read it? I'll put a PDF on the, I'll give it to you to put on the chat box for the Zoom people. Maybe if you want me to, I've got to do some course notes anyway. So I'll send it with the course notes for the people if they want to email. It blew my mind just interviewing people about him. It seemed hard to imagine this person. When anybody you met Lama Zopa, he seemed like a nice, happy fellow, When you realize, when I first interviewed Dilma Roger about him, because he spent the last 40 years being his attendant, right? Being up close, 40 years. This year, 40 years. So it was hard to imagine it. He said he became his attendant in 1986, 85 maybe, yeah. And he had no idea what was expected of him. He didn't know. He knew, what he didn't know. So he thought he'd take the lead from Lama Zopa to show what he wanted. Like if you take a job to be someone's assistant, you get told you get to learn what they want from you. You know your job description, But he said Lama Zopa never showed any needs. So in the world's terms, that's a bit like mental illness. But he never, ever, for example, ever showed interest in food. He would never eat food or have a cup of tea if you didn't give it to him. So you had to start kind of anticipating. He would never sleep. He never uncrossed his legs. He's on his bed, he's sitting cross-legged. And when he wasn't dealing with people and giving teachings and going here and there, he'd be meditating. He didn't sleep. As a little boy, he had no interest in sleep. He was meditating. I mean, that alone is just exhausting to think about, like impossible, He never showed any interest in getting anything. If people interrupted his lunch, he would happily talk to them. People even coming into the window at 3 a.m, people used to do, especially girls would fall in love with him. He'd chat to them, welcome, sit down. He never showed any interest in getting anything. So it was utterly confusing for Venerable Roger. He didn't know what to do. So he tried to do what Rinpoche was showing he needed, which means he had to work 24 hours a day as well, which of course he couldn't do, it's impossible. So he didn't know what to do. It was really hard to know how to fulfill Rinpoche's wishes because he never showed. There was no time off, no breaks. It was after about 2 years of this. He threw his hands in the air and he said to himself, this is the Bodhisattva way of life. This is the Bodhisattva's way of life. In other words, here in front of him was a genuine, actual Bodhisattva who no longer had the thought of I. So, of course, you can't just fall out of the sky like that. It's the fruit of unbelievable number of lifetimes of practice, for God's sake. But it seems inhuman to us. It seems, you think, who would want to be this way? It just seems too ridiculous, Then he had a stroke. He had a stroke Not in 2011. And then I was in Australia when it happened, and they took him off to the local little hospital, Catholic hospital, local small city. And he said the people were completely confused. First of all, Venerable Roger spent the night, day and night with him all the time, and there's two of his other little Tibetan monks. And so to these people, I mean, Lama Zopa would laugh. He was laughing. I know we got Venerable Roger sent a video to us at the center. There were hundreds of us there in the middle of a teaching, and he had to go to the hospital. So he sent a video. So there he was after this stroke on all these drugs. He looked all kind of puffed up, and he sounded like a drunk. But he was laughing. I mean, you don't laugh. Most people are traumatized by having a stroke, and all the family as well. But he would be laughing. He never asked the doctors any question. They initially thought he was mentally ill. He never, ever showed any interest in the mental illness. He never asked in the suffering. He never asked any questions. When he discovered, you know, he would do his exercises for a while. He'd go in the pool and do things. And then most of the time he spent just kind of saying mantras and blessing the water. And then he discovered the sheets and the pillowcases were shared by everybody in the hospital. So he would say mantras and blow on the pillows and blow on the sheets. I mean, you think, who wants to be like that anyway? Who would think, you know, it just seems too weird. That's an example of a person who has given up attachment, given up anger, given up neuroses, and not just that, but has intentionally developed insane levels of this wish that others be happy, and the wish to make them happy, and the wish they don't suffer, and the wish to take away their suffering. That's what drove his life. So I don't know. If you want to be like that, then go for it, babies. It seems so tiring. I mean, it's all I can say. Do you understand my point? I mean, when you hear examples like that, it feels extreme. If you see someone like the Dalai Lama, he feels more manageable somehow. He seems more ordinary and cracks jokes. And he talks about he goes to bed at night at 8 o'clock and gets up in the morning. He seems to act like normal people. And you feel a bit relieved. Oh, phew, that seems a bit better, you know. But they just show different aspects, right? If he is a great yogi, which he is meant to be, then he doesn't really sleep. He just pretends. He's in samadhi the whole time, you know. And he tries to show to the world ordinary qualities, you know. He kind of jokes and says he gets angry. But somehow he doesn't convince anybody. No one believes him because you know he doesn't. But it's hard for ordinary people to think of it like that. But you've got to look at the same time at how he moves ordinary people. I know years ago when he traveled a lot and he'd visit all the centers and go around the world. And I remember one time Lama Zopa, he asked a whole bunch of us to be his security guard. About 10 of us. He gave us this job. So we traveled for about 6 weeks in Europe with His Holiness every day on the plane. We'd pretend to be these security guards who were so kind to us. You know, we had these uniforms and everything. It was hilarious. And just observing up close how people responded to it was incredible. And he was just ordinary and funny and cracked jokes and laughed, but people were so moved, people were in tears. I remember in Australia, in the mid-90s, he spent like 2 months in Australia, and I interviewed all the people involved in all the cities, all the security guards and the media. Everybody was moved by this person, and he acted normal. He didn't act like weird. He acted sort of just ordinary. People were so moved by him. That seems to be the character. That seems to be the quality that touches people, you know, is genuine affection for you. Like everybody, like all the people I've talked to, who've interviewed him, like journalists, they all say, and people who have private meetings with him, you all feel like you are the most special person to him. And you can't pretend that, you know. They're the characters of the person who's given up attachment, anger, jealousy, neurosis, self-centeredness, and has cultivated love and compassion and virtues. That's it. Manifesting in different ways. We call them in the Christian world, we call them a saint. That's it, isn't it? So any questions? 20 to 2. Yeah, got 15 minutes. Questions? Any questions, please? Yes. Get louder, darling. Give us the mic, please. Microphone, please. Bit closer, sweetheart. To that little piece there, that little pokey bit. The little pokey bit's where the mic is. Oh, there it is. Yeah, let's go. Go.
Okay, here we are. How's that? Right here? Okay.
No, the other end. The long pokey piece.
This right
That's
here. Oh,
it.
hey.
That's the mic.
Oh, got it.
That's what I'm supposed to have, but I don't like it.
Okay. I have a question. So yes, I totally get what you say
Yeah.
about, loving kindness and compassion for all beings. However, even those that do terrible, horrible things, in my opinion, but I still get this knee-jerk reaction immediately that then I can't shake it.
That's right. I understand that.
I need that advice.
So the knee-jerk reaction, try and label what that would, how does it, this knee-jerk reaction of what? Of horror, of anger?
Repulsiveness,
Anger, really, aversion.
anger and aversion.
Meaning, how dare they do it, isn't it?
Right.
That's right. That's the one, isn't it?
Hate.
Exactly.
And
exactly,
hate.
Exactly.
And I want to see.
I understand, darling.
Okay.
That's it. Let me answer you. Let me give you the Buddhist answer. Sit down, relax, and I'll tell you about it.
Okay.
Okay. So the thing is, if you're a Christian, then the logical reason you'd have love for the harmers is because you know that God loves them too. I mean, have you been a Christian? Got a Christian view. That would be enough for a Christian to love everybody. You understand? Because they also know that they're being a sinner, they're harming themselves. So that can give them the basis of loving them. Do you understand my point? And wanting to try to help them. So the Buddhist view is the view of karma. The Buddhist view is, as you must know, I don't know what you know about Buddhism, but the Buddhist view is that we've all got these countless past lives, life after life after life after life. And in lifetime, we've met each other, we've harmed and we've been harmed. We've harmed and we've been harmed, countless lifetimes. There's almost no lives we haven't had. There's almost no negative action or positive action we haven't done. This is how the Buddhists were saying. So then when you understand karma, number one, this is a huge one for Buddhism, and then you understand the mind and the delusions and attachment to get what I want. So then you are born, let's say there's that pedophile, let's say this man, usually men, who since he's a little boy, doesn't know why, he's driven. No, even another example, a friend of mine in prison, in Buddhist in Kentucky on death row, and there's a guy there on death row whom I've met. He used to come to the classes I'd give. And Mitchell said to me, Robina, he thinks of torture all the time. So when we understand, back in the wisdom wing, in the very first stages of it, we understand karma. This man, he's got, due to past virtue, he's got a human body, but also due to non-virtuous past tendencies, he's born in this life with this very intense attachment, this very intense craving to harm people because of being harmed in the past and have the habit of harming. And that's how he gets his pleasure, from having done it before countless times. He doesn't know what, he didn't know as a little boy why he wanted to torture. He had no idea. His mother didn't teach him, but we're born with these tendencies, whether it's tendency to be good at music or killing or torture. We don't know why. We don't learn these things. We're driven by these tendencies from past habits. Do you understand me? When you have that view, then you can only have compassion for them because they are harming, not to mention harming others, but they're driven by this insanity and they don't know why. No one sits there and chooses, I think I'll be a pedophile. A man doesn't know why since a little boy, and as he gets older, he's completely obsessed with little girls and little boys. Do you understand my point? And the only way to understand this is if you take the Buddhist view of karma. All these habits from countless lifetimes, from animal lifetimes, from harming. And we wake up in this life with these weird, wacky tendencies. So then, first of all, you think, thank goodness I haven't got those. Aren't I fortunate? And then you realize, you understand me? Then, and once you know your own mind, and you mightn't be a pedophile, but you've got attachment, you've got anger, you get jealous sometimes, and they are causing you pain, and anything you've done to harm others, even if it's tiny, it's because of those. So you just multiply that and look at the harm they're doing. And they say the bodhisattvas have such compassion for us because we don't realize karma. We don't realize that we are the product of our past, good and bad, and that we are creating our future, suffering and happiness. And they say that's the greatest reason to have such compassion for harmers. So our trouble is when we have compassion, it's usually only for innocent victims, which is what your point makes. As long as the person is innocent, then we're prepared to have compassion for them. But as soon as a person does harm to others, and you're right, they are harming. They're doing terrible. Look at the harm that people do to each other. Then they are harming others, but they're driven by this craving, and they're driven by anger, and they're driven by these negative habits. So who do you think, apart from anybody else, that they're harming? is themselves. So I remember always this example I always give. This is the Buddhist perspective, you know, these young Tibetan nuns, I tell the story so many times, invited by Richard Gere in New York. He invited 20 former prisoners to meet His Holiness. And people like me were invited, working with people in prison. And all this cross-section of Americans all had this lovely day talking to His Holiness. They talked about their suffering in prison. And Richard Gere also invited 2 young Tibetan nuns who'd been tortured and sexually abused in prison in Tibet. And they were telling their story. And you could tell that if you wanted to quantify suffering, theirs was worse than everybody else's. But it was evident to all the Americans that they weren't angry. They didn't have anger because they have the logic of karma in their brain. Since the 7th century, the view of karma, and since 3,000 years ago, the view of karma has been the world view, been reality for the Indian and Asian world. Do you understand? So in the same way that the materialist view is what's in our brains, just automatic, that's their view. They take it as a given. Since they're little girls, they're brought up with it. And it's not guilt and neurosis. It's just that's the view of the world. So they know why things happen, good and bad. When good things happen, they rejoice and they are happy because they know they created the cause for virtue. And when bad things happen, they're able more easily to take responsibility. Of course, it was suffering, but they didn't have this anguished, how dare you do that to me? I don't deserve it. That's the view that we have because we think mummy made us, daddy made us, or God made us, and it's not my fault. Do you understand? These are deep in our bones. Let me just finish. So these young women were telling their story about their own suffering. And there were tears, they were sad. And then one of them, this is my point now, said, and of course, we had compassion for our torturers because we know we must have harmed them in the past. They were part of this deal, and that we know they will suffer unbearably in the future. That's the basis of compassion in Buddhism. You see my point? That doesn't, it can't come overnight. It's a view, you know. So that, and then the other trouble is we have compassion. It's always sentimental. Oh, the poor thing. So we think if I have compassion for a pedophile, that means I go, oh, the poor thing can't help it, you know, go away. No, compassion is very powerful, and you will protect yourself from people who are harming, and you'll protect them from harming for their benefit. Put them in prison, no argument, but out of compassion to stop them from harming themselves and others. You understand? It's a very different kind of compassion. You know why they're doing it, and you have such compassion because they're driven by their own craziness, you know. Do you understand me? It takes time, darling. Go on, yeah, talk. Take the microphone.
So what is the practice to be able to eliminate that knee-jerk reaction?
Darling, it's just take all the path of the whole path of what I'm talking about. Is you start with your own mind. You start with your own mind. You recognize attachment, you recognize aversion. We slowly learn to give these up, understand them, how they cause us pain, and even see how the anger causes us pain. So then it's a slow, gradual process of learning to understand these views, meditating every day and getting more brave. So even the basic one, don't worry about the torturers and the pedophiles. Just start with, sit down again. Even this is where you start with the small things. Like, you know, I always joke, it's my joke, but you listen to it. You know, you dug your practice in the morning and you go downstairs and there's your hubby and he's slurping his coffee again and you get annoyed. I mean, annoyance, irritation, upset and frustrated are polite words for anger. So start with those. Start with putting up with your hubby's slurping, putting up with your sister's annoying habits, because that's what aversion is. That's what anger is. And you get brave and you confront it and you see it and you work with it. So then you're ready for the big ones. It's one step at a time. You hear my point? Because attachment, anger, aversion, and it's very true. You have this horrific response, is the response because your attachment doesn't get what it wants. That's hard to see. Attachment is this emotional hunger in us that only wants everything to be lovely. It only wants what I want. So then you realize aversion is this kind of response. I can't cope with that. Go away. So just minor things like slurping the coffee or the red light, work on those first and you get braver. And you look the thing in the eye and you say, it's not that bad after all. And then when you have the heavy duty things, you can see the suffering that's happening and you understand why. And then you think, if I could change it, I will. If I could help them, I will. But if I can't, I'll keep working on myself and I'll do what I can and I'll help the people I can help. And you go one step at a time. Because Bodhisattvas, they talk about courageous compassion. They've got this outrageously courageous view that nothing disturbs them anymore. They only want to help others. Do you get my point? They become very courageous. We're so scaredy, baby. We can't cope with pain. We can't cope with the suffering of the world. That's why we go crazy. You understand me? And this is just the Buddhist answer. This is the Buddhist view. You know, Christians have another view. We've got different approaches, but it makes you very brave. You understand? We do what we can. We don't give up. That's the attitude of the Bodhisattva. You understand? And stop people from harming. If you can, stop them immediately if you can. If you can, for their sake as well as the victim, you know. You understand? And I always say that. I always think, you know, a pedophile, nobody has compassion for a pedophile, but a pedophile's mother has compassion for her boy. She knows, because she knows he's harming himself. That's the thing to see, as well as harming others. When we can see the little bit of harm that we do to others is because we have our own suffering, then we can see it in others. Do you get my point? Whereas we tend to be so holy, oh, look at those evil people out there, as if we are innocent. We've got to recognize our own delusions, even our, do you understand me? So important. That informs our ability to have compassion for others. Do you understand that? Yes, people. Somebody else on Zoom, something. No, we can finish then. Time to go. Almost. Yes. Mark, over here, Lou. Yes.
Thank you for being here. Why karma? What if there is no karma? What if this is it?
Say it again. What? Why? What?
Karma.
Yeah.
What if this is it? And
what is the what?
What if this is all there is?
Yes.
And being
okay.
compassionate is worthy for its own sake.
Compassion is what?
For its own sake.
What do you mean by that? I want to understand you. What do you mean? For its own sake. Sounds wonderful.
Because it's the right thing to do.
Oh, I see. The right thing to do. Why is it the right thing to do? For whose sake? For your sake or the other person or both or what?
For the sake of everyone and all of us.
Okay. So you mean, so the reasons, okay, I understand your point. Good, sit down. I understand. I mean, don't sit down. Do what you like. It's all right. I understand your point. What I'm doing here is giving a logical reason from the Buddhist perspective that explains why people do bad things, and that's why karma is to explain why they do bad things, and which then becomes the basis for having compassion. But if a person is not interested in knowing why somebody does bad things and is able to have compassion, then honey child, go for it. I'm not complaining. Go for it, please. Nothing wrong. Perfect. Go for it. It's up to you. Whatever works for your mind. Great. Go for it. Perfect. Do you hear my point? A Christian's reason is because it's just up to you to decide what view you have, you know? It's up to you to decide. I mean, for example, my friend Sunny in prison, I always use her as an example of a person who had this nightmarish environment of being accused of murdering 2 policemen, never did. Husband got executed, his brains burst into flame, she lost her children, she's in prison for 17 years and she's totally innocent. And she has no interest in, she doesn't talk about karma, she doesn't talk about God, she doesn't talk about religion, but she had this ability to change her mind because she could see that she could. Then good enough. Good enough. Whatever works, honey. You see my point? Go for it. I mean, if Buddha's either right or he's wrong, you don't need to find out if you don't want to. But I happen to like this view, and I find I've always asked, I mean, one of my sisters, Julie, we always joke that she's a really good person, runs around helping everybody on the planet, goes to this demonstration, that demonstration, helps this one, helps that one, and she's happy doing it. And we joke that she's never once asked, what's the purpose of life? Why am I here? Christian, God, karma, she couldn't care less. So she sounds like you. Go for it. Do it. Nothing wrong. Do you understand me? Whatever works for your mind. Are we communicating? Thank you so much. That'll do then. Let's finish on that good point. So if anything's been useful, 1% of it, 0.5% of it, great, happy. And if none, I'm very sorry. So whatever makes us want to develop love and compassion, perfect, totally perfect. Use that and keep working. It's amazing. Jangchub Semchog, Rinpoche, Ma Kye Panam, Kye Gyuchi, Kye Panyam Pa, Me Pa Yang, Gong Ne, Gondu, Pa Ba Shog. May compassion, may Bodhichitta grow and grow in the hearts of all for everybody's sake. Absolutely. That's it. Thank you. So kind. Thank you so much. Thank you, Zoom. See you, sweethearts.